My parents forgot to pick up my son from the hospital after his appendix surgery. We were busy with your brother's son's soccer game, Mom texted. I replied, okay. 2 days later, I showed up at that soccer game with legal papers. Dad grabbed my arm. What is this? I smiled. The house you're living in? I bought it for you in 2019. I'm ending our agreement. My brother lunged at me, but the officer I'd brought said I was standing under the hospital's fluorescent lights with a paper cup of bad coffee shaking in my hand when the nurse said, "We really need an adult to take him home." My son, Noah, was 8. He just had his appendix removed. He was pale, sleepy, and trying so hard to be brave that it made my throat tighten. I had arranged everything. I had paid the copay. I had brought the extra hoodie, the crackers, the little dinosaur keychain he liked to hold when he was scared, and I had arranged a pickup. My parents had insisted. "We'll get him," my mom said the day before, loud and confident, like she was announcing a charity project. "You have your business. We can handle one thing." So I believed them. I shouldn't have. At 2:10 p.m., I texted my mom, "We're being discharged soon. We're in day surgery room 12. At 2:22 p.m., I called. No answer. At 2:35 p.m., I called my dad. Straight to voicemail. At 2:47 p.m., the nurse came back with that polite smile that says, "I know you're panicking, but I can't say it out loud." Noah whispered, "Mom, are Grandma and Grandpa coming?" I told him they're on their way, because what else do you say to a kid who just had surgery? At 3:06 p.m., my mom finally texted, "We were busy with your brother's son's soccer game. Sorry, can you just get an Uber?" I stared at the screen until the words blurred. My son had stitches under his belly button. He was hooked up to an IV an hour ago. He couldn't sit upright without wincing. And my mom was asking me to just get an Uber. I typed one word back. Okay. Not because I was okay, because my hands were shaking and I knew if I started typing anything real, I would explode right there in front of the nurses and my son. I swallowed everything, signed the discharge papers, and got Noah to the car myself. I moved slow. I buckled him in like he was made of glass. I drove home with my jaw clenched so tight my teeth hurt. That night, Noah slept on the couch with a pillow under his knees like the nurse instructed. I slept sitting up on the floor beside him because every time he shifted, he made this tiny noise like he was trying not to complain. At 10:41 p.m., my mom texted again. "He's fine though, right? Tell him Grandpa says feel better." I didn't respond. I just stared at the message until my phone went dark. My name is Liam. I was 36 then. I lived outside Columbus, Ohio, in a small house that always smelled like cardboard because I ran an online store selling luxury plumbing fixtures. Not the cheap stuff, the kind of faucets that come wrapped like jewelry. Italian shower systems, matte black tub fillers that cost more than a month of groceries. People think it's funny until they remodel a forever home and suddenly they're begging you to find a specific discontinued finish. The business did well, not billionaire well, but I can breathe well. I was a single dad. Noah's mom had been gone for years. Not dead, just gone in the way that leaves you doing parent-teacher conferences alone and learning how to braid a Halloween costume cape at midnight. My parents lived in a house I bought. That sentence used to make me proud. In 2019, my parents were about to lose everything. That's how my dad put it. He said the mortgage was behind, the roof was bad, and a man shouldn't be thrown out of his home at his age. They cried at my kitchen table. My mom held my hand like we were close. My dad kept saying, "We did so much for you." So I bought the house. Not gifted them money, not co-signed a loan. I bought it. In my name. My credit, my down payment, my signature on every page. The agreement was simple. They could live there, they paid the utilities, and a small monthly amount when they could. I'd cover property taxes and insurance. We said it like adults. We shook hands. Then it became a one-way hose of expectations. The small monthly amount turned into, "We'll get you next month." Utilities started showing up in my inbox because Mom forgot. Repairs became, "Liam, you're good at this stuff. Just handle it." Every time my brother needed something, my parents called it family. My brother, Derek, had the kind of life my parents loved. Married, 3 kids, church photos, matching shirts at holidays. He also had the kind of finances that always seemed to be on fire. They always said it wasn't his fault. Kids are expensive. His wife is stressed. He's doing his best. Meanwhile, Noah and I were the quiet side branch. the one that wasn't useful for family pictures. It didn't start with big cruelty. It started with little things. Noah making a card for Grandma and her leaving it on the counter under a stack of mail. Family dinner where everyone got dessert first and Noah got the last slice because he's not picky. Birthday parties where Derek's kids got loud cheers and Noah got a quick, "Oh, happy birthday, buddy," without anyone looking up from their phones. I let it slide because I thought consistency would win. I thought if I kept showing up, if I kept being the steady one, eventually they'd remember Noah mattered too. And because I was still paying for the roof over their heads, that part always sat in my chest like a rock. After the hospital day, I didn't confront them. Not immediately. I did what I always did. I took care of my kid. I ran my business. I answered customer emails at 2 a.m. because a contractor in California needed a spec sheet ASAP. I made Noah's medicine schedule into a chart and taped it to the fridge. My mom didn't call Noah. Not once. My dad sent a thumbs-up emoji. Derek sent a photo of his son holding a trophy at the soccer game with the caption, "He killed it today." I stared at that photo longer than I should have. Not because I hate my nephew. I don't. Because my nephew got a whole cheering section. My son got abandoned in a recovery ward. 2 days later, my mom sent a group text. "Soccer game Saturday at 10. Everyone come support Mason." I stared at the message and felt something settle inside me. Not rage, clarity. I replied in the group thread, "I'll be there." Saturday morning was cold and bright. The kind of crisp day people post on social media with captions about fall vibes, even though it's spring. Noah was still walking slowly. He had a small bandage and a bigger bruise where the IV had been. He sat at my kitchen table coloring quietly while I printed papers in my office. 3 copies, one for them, one for me, one for the court file. I didn't do this in a burst. I had already talked to an attorney the day after the hospital, not because I wanted revenge, but because I needed facts. I needed to know what I could legally do. I needed to know how to end an arrangement that had turned into a trap. By 9:15 a.m., I had an envelope with my parents' names on it. Inside was a formal notice terminating their occupancy agreement and beginning the process for them to vacate. I also had documents showing ownership, because I learned a long time ago that when you stop funding people, they suddenly forget the truth. I called a friend who was a police officer and asked if he could meet me at the field, not to scare anyone, not to start something, just to make sure it didn't turn into a hands-on situation in front of kids. He said, "Text me the location." I did. Then I packed Noah a blanket and a juice box and told him, "We're going to watch soccer for a little bit. You can sit in the car if you get tired." He nodded, quiet and polite like always. That's what broke me the most. Noah was never difficult. He was never loud. He was the kid who says thank you twice. And somehow, he was still disposable to them. The soccer field was already crowded when we arrived. Folding chairs lined the sidelines like a little suburban audience. My mom was in a bright jacket waving at Derek's wife. My dad had a travel mug and that puffed-up posture he gets when he's around the family. They hadn't seen Noah since the hospital. They didn't walk over. My mom glanced at us and then turned back to the field like she'd spotted a distant bird. Derek clapped loud and yelled, "Let's go, Mason!" I stood behind the last row of chairs with Noah beside me, his small hand tucked into his hoodie pocket. Noah leaned toward me and whispered, "Do we have to stay long?" I said not long. My mom finally wandered over during warm-ups. She smiled at Noah like he was a neighbor kid. "There he is," she said. "Feeling better?" My mom looked at me and said, "Lo, you didn't have to be so dramatic about the hospital. We told you we were busy." I stared at her, busy. She shrugged like the word should cover everything. It was Mason's game. Derek needed us. I felt my mouth go dry. Noah needed you. My mom's eyes flicked away. "Well, he's okay, so..." That was the moment I knew there was nothing to salvage. Not with money, not with patience. Not with one more holiday, because she wasn't even embarrassed. She was annoyed that I still remembered it. I nodded once and said, "Okay." Then I waited until halftime, when the kids were getting water and the adults were milling around. I didn't want to do this with the whistle blowing. I didn't want Noah to be the reason the entire field went quiet. I walked toward my parents with the envelope in my hand. My dad saw it and smiled like it was a birthday card. "What's that?" he asked. I handed it to him. He opened it right there, standing on grass beside a row of folding chairs. His eyes moved across the first page. His face changed. He grabbed my arm hard enough that my skin pinched. "What is this?" I didn't yank away. I didn't raise my voice. I looked down at his hand on my sleeve, and then back up at him. I smiled. "The house you're living in?" I said. "I bought it for you in 2019. I'm ending our agreement." My mom's mouth fell open. "Liam." My dad shook the paper like it was a betrayal. "You can't do this. We're your parents." I said, "You forgot my son at the hospital." My mom hissed. "We didn't forget. We were." I read the text. My dad tightened his grip again, and that's when Derek appeared like a storm cloud. He walked up fast, eyes sharp. "What are you doing?" I didn't step back. I kept my voice even. "I'm stopping the financial arrangement," I said. "They have notice. They have time. But I'm done." Derek's face went red. "You're going to throw them out? Over a misunderstanding?" "A misunderstanding is when someone writes down the wrong time," I said. This was a choice. My mom's eyes got wet instantly, like she had a switch for tears. "How could you humiliate us here?" I glanced around at the field. People were watching now. Not the kids, the adults. "That quiet suburban curiosity," I said. "You humiliated Noah at the hospital." Derek lunged. Not fully, not like a movie. But he stepped into my space hard, shoulders forward, hands twitching like he wanted to shove me. And that's when the officer I'd brought stepped up beside me. Calm, neutral, just present. He said, "Sir, take a step back." Derek froze. "Are you kidding me?" The officer didn't argue. He just repeated, "Step back." Derek's wife grabbed his arm. My dad stared at the officer like the world had flipped upside down. My mom whispered, "Liam, you brought police to a children's game?" I said, "I brought a witness to an adult problem." My dad looked down at the papers again, like maybe the words would change if he read them twice. "You're serious?" he said, voice thinner now. I nodded. "I'm serious." My mom tried a different tone, suddenly soft. "We can talk about this at home." I said, "Not your home." That landed like a rock. My mom's face twisted. "You wouldn't." Noah tugged my sleeve. I looked down at him. He whispered, "Can we go now?" I said yes, and we walked back to the car. Behind us, I heard my dad shouting my name. I didn't turn around. The fallout started before I even got home. Missed calls. Texts from my mom that went from crying to angry in the span of minutes. "How could you do this to us? We sacrificed everything for you. Derek says you're unstable. You're hurting the whole family. Derek texted me too. You're disgusting. You're punishing mom and dad because you're jealous." Jealous. That word made me laugh out loud in my empty kitchen, and then it made me feel sick because I wasn't jealous. I was tired. I was the person who paid the property taxes while being told to calm down. I was the person who replaced their water heater while my son got ignored at birthdays. I was the person who showed up with groceries when Derek fell behind, only to watch my parents clap for Mason's goals like that was the center of the universe. That night, I did the one clean move my attorney told me to do. I logged into the account where I paid the house expenses. I removed auto pay for the insurance. I canceled the property tax escrow transfer. I changed every password. Then I emailed the new formal notice, the one that would hold up when they tried to claim they didn't know. I didn't write a long message. Just, per the attached notice, our agreement is terminated. All further communication should be in writing. I stared at the sent confirmation. My hands were steady. For the first time in years, my hands were steady. 2 days later, my parents showed up at my door. My mom was holding a grocery store pie like it was a peace offering. My dad's face was tight and gray. They didn't ask how Noah was. They didn't apologize. They went straight to the point. My dad said, "We need to talk about the house." I nodded. "You got the notice." My mom stepped forward. "Liam, sweetheart, you're acting like we left him in the street." "You left him in a hospital?" I said. "After surgery." My mom's eyes flashed. "We were at a game." I said, "I know. You texted me." My dad tried the old guilt voice. "We raised you. We gave you everything." I didn't argue. I didn't list the money. I didn't bring up the roof, or the property taxes, or the furnace I paid for. I just said one sentence, slow and clear. I won't fund a family my child isn't part of. My mom's mouth opened like she had a script ready. I held up my hand. This isn't a discussion. My dad's voice cracked. Where are we supposed to go? I said. That's for you to figure out. My mom looked at Noah, who was standing behind me holding a stuffed dog. Noah, tell your dad you don't want Grandma and Grandpa to be homeless. Noah's face went blank. He didn't speak. I stepped slightly in front of him, not aggressive, just protective. Don't put that on him, I said. My mom's eyes went hard. You've always been dramatic. I nodded once. And you've always been comfortable. Then I closed the door. I didn't slam it, I just closed it, locked it, and stood there for a second with my forehead against the wood, breathing. The next weeks were a parade of pressure. My aunt called to mediate. My cousin messaged me Bible verses about honoring parents. Derek left a voicemail that sounded like he was talking through clenched teeth, saying I was breaking Mom's heart. My parents sent a letter in the mail, an actual letter, claiming the house was promised to them and that I was confused. That part was almost funny. Confused. Like ownership is a vibe. My attorney handled what needed to be handled. Everything went through the right channels. Everything stayed quiet and legal and boring. That was the point. No screaming, no chaos. Just consequences. The only time I almost broke was when Noah asked, one night while I was changing his bandage, did I do something wrong? I swallowed hard. No. He stared at the ceiling. Grandma didn't come because I'm not important. I set the tape down carefully so my hands wouldn't shake. I said, Grandma didn't come because Grandma made a selfish choice. That's not about you. Noah nodded like he wanted to believe me. Then he whispered, okay. That word again. Okay. But this time it wasn't a weapon. It was him trusting me to make it okay. Spring came. Noah healed. His appetite came back. He stopped walking like an old man and started running again, which was both a relief and a new kind of terror. My parents moved out before it hit court, not because they suddenly found morals, but because they realized I wasn't bluffing. Derek stopped speaking to me entirely. My mom sent one last text that said, you'll regret this when we're gone. I didn't reply, because the truth was, I regretted the years I kept paying to be treated like an afterthought. The quiet closure didn't look like a dramatic family reunion or some perfect apology. It looked like a Wednesday night at my kitchen table. Noah had a plate of mac and cheese. He was drawing a soccer field on a piece of printer paper, little stick figures, and a goalie with huge gloves. He looked up and said, can we go to a game sometime? Just us? I smiled. Yeah, we can. He nodded, satisfied, and went back to drawing. On the fridge, I taped up the hospital discharge sheet, not because I wanted to remember the pain, but because it reminded me of something important. I had gotten him through it. I didn't need them. Later that month, we drove past the old field on a Saturday. There was another game happening. Parents cheering. Kids running. Someone blowing a whistle. Noah looked out the window for a second. Then he turned back to me and said, I'm hungry. Can we get pancakes? I said, absolutely. And we did. We sat in a booth with a sticky table and cheap syrup and a waitress who called him Sweetheart. Noah laughed when I made a dumb joke about the whipped cream. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't a victory speech. It was just peace. And for the first time in a long time, peace felt like a real family tradition.